Greetings, marketing students. Dr. Rodriguez here, talking to you guys today about consumer attitudes, concepts, measurement, and managerial application. First of all, what do we mean by consumer attitudes? Attitudes are learned, lasting, overall or general evaluations of people, objects, concepts. That can include brands, stores, a salesperson, a particular product or product category. So attitudes represent a summary evaluation, which includes our beliefs and our feelings about the attitude object. A researcher named Daniel Katz developed the functional theory of attitudes to explain how attitudes facilitate social behavior. This theory suggests that attitudes exist because they serve some function for the person. So two people can have an attitude toward the same object, but for very different reasons. For instance, one person's attitude toward his or her university may be utilitarian, and so it serves a utilitarian function, in the sense that the university presents opportunities for advancement through graduating, getting a job. Thus, this person expresses a positive attitude about the university and feels a positive attitude toward faculty and administrators because this improves the person's motivation and advancement opportunities. Another person's attitude toward his or her university may serve an ego defense function, meaning that since he or she chose to attend this university, it says something about that person's self-worth and value. So it makes sense to have a positive attitude because otherwise you'd be threatening your internal sense of self-worth and self-value. So by having a positive attitude toward the university, it protects the person from those threats to self-worth. A third person's attitude toward the university may serve a knowledge role that simplifies decision-making, such as which graduate program to apply to. If the person's attitude toward their undergraduate institution is positive, it makes the decision to apply for that university's master's program easier. Lastly, a fourth person's attitude toward the university may serve a value-expressive function, in that their positive attitude reflects the fact that the university's values and brand image make a positive statement about the person's own values and self-image. Now, an attitude has three components: affect, which is the way a consumer feels about an attitude object; behavior, which is the person's intentions to do something with regard to an attitude object; and cognition, which are the beliefs a consumer has about an attitude object. So which comes first, knowing, feeling, or doing? It turns out that each element may lead things off and begin the process depending on the situation. The hierarchies of effects, some of which are shown here, show the relative impact of the three components under different situations. Each hierarchy shows a fixed sequence of steps which can occur en route to an attitude. The hierarchies include the standard high involvement process of developing beliefs first, then developing feelings about those beliefs, and then developing intentions to act on those beliefs. This attitude is based on cognitive information processing. In the other hierarchies of effects, consumers learn about how they feel and think about the product by using it first, or they may develop an overall positive or negative feeling about it first and then discover what beliefs are triggering those feelings. So why are marketers interested in consumer attitudes? There are several reasons. First of all, it helps in prediction. Firms rely on past behavior generally to predict future behavior, but there's a disadvantage to that this does not account for consumer changes or for future behavior regarding new products. However, attitudes allow firms to anticipate changes in future behavior, including behavior toward new products. This is because attitudes are action in waiting. They are a predisposition to behave a certain way toward the attitude object. If the marketer can influence consumers' attitudes, Then they can influence the consumer's response or behavior toward the attitude object. Diagnosis. Diagnosis refers to the why behind consumers' behavioral disposition toward the product or the brand. Also, consumer attitudes provide easy and relatively inexpensive marketing research data that can be used to inform managerial decision-making. And last but not least, it is very useful for benefit segmentation of the market. Consumer attitude measurement can help a firm predict which products in its product portfolio are going to be dogs. It's far better at predicting this than at predicting which ones are going to be stars. In other words, measuring consumers' attitudes towards the firm's products can help the firm pinpoint weaknesses, which products are not going to do so well. On the other hand, it's not as useful in predicting which products are going to be the superstars of the portfolio. The contemporary view of attitude components shows that feelings and beliefs determine consumer attitudes, and then attitudes influence behavioral intention, which influences behavior. There are several properties of attitudes that marketers must consider when formulating strategies to influence said attitudes. The first is valence. This refers to the favorableness of an attitude. It ranges from positive to neutral to negative. Second is intensity, which is the strength of the attitude toward the object. The third is resistance to change.
What was that?
This refers to how unlikely the consumer is to update their attitude toward the object.
You're a star.
The third is persistence, which is the degree to which an attitude will or will not erode, weaken, or dissipate over time.
I just like singing about
And lastly is confidence, which is pretty self-explanatory, how confident the consumer is that they feel a certain way about the attitude object. We use attitude models, such as the multi-attribute attitude model, to identify specific components of the attitude and combine them to predict a consumer's overall attitude toward a product or brand. Multi-attribute models assume that a consumer's attitude toward an object depends on the beliefs, the salient beliefs, that he or she has about several attributes. The Fishbein model, developed by Martin Fishbein, is the most influential of multi-attribute models. The model measures three components of attitudes: salient beliefs, which refer to the assessment of whether the brand has specific attributes, object-attribute linkages, and evaluation of favorableness of each of the important attributes. Using these components, we can compute a consumer's overall attitude toward an object. Marketing applications of the multi-attribute model. Capitalizing on relative advantage. If prospective customers viewed your brand as superior relative to competing brands, a marketer could use a multi-attribute attitude model to identify which attributes provide the advantage and leverage those in marketing communications and product design to maintain their salience, meaning their awareness and importance, in consumers' minds. Strengthen perceived linkages. A marketer might discover that consumers do not equate his or her brand with a certain attribute that should be central to consumers' attitude toward that product. A marketing communications campaign can be used to strengthen the positive linkage between the attribute and the brand in consumers' minds. Adding a new attribute. Marketers can influence consumers' attitudes with marketing communications that add a new, favorable, salient attribute belief when new features are developed for products. Influence competitors' ratings. Finally, a marketer can attempt to decrease the competitor's higher attitude ratings with comparative advertising. Now we'll focus on measuring attitudes. And as a reminder, the managerial applications of attitude measurement include it providing marketing research information, diagnosing weak attitude components, and providing a basis for benefit segmentation of customers in the market. Now, if a marketer just wants to know how consumers generally feel about the brand, they could measure global attitudes, which just ask consumers generally how positive or negative their attitude is toward the brand. However, the marketer needs to know why consumers feel the way they do to be able to change those attitudes. The tool used to learn why? Multi-attribute attitude models. These models specify the different elements that might work together to influence product evaluation. Depicted here, you see the formula, the mathematical formula, for the Fishbein multi-attribute model. The A represents the overall attitude score for the brand that is computed based on the formula. B refers to consumers' belief regarding the degree of the attribute that the brand possesses. E refers to consumers' evaluations of the attribute. What this mathematical formula tells us that in order to derive the attitude toward the object, you must multiply together the belief regarding the degree of the attribute the brand possesses times the evaluation of that attribute for each attribute that's being evaluated as part of the attitude, and then you add those products together, the product of B times E. So the model says A, the attitude, equals the sum of the product of B times E for all the number of salient or important attributes. And we will illustrate this in the subsequent slides, so it should make a little bit more sense.